America's 37th First Lady was born in Ely, Nevada on March 16, 1912. March 16, 2021 will be Pat Nixon's 109th birthday. Throughout her life, Pat Nixon believed in the importance of volunteerism. She believed in the power of individuals to help one another and change society, and she practiced what she preached. In 1942, she worked as a full-time volunteer in the Washington, D.C. headquarters of the American Red Cross. As First Lady, she said, "People are my project," and she championed volunteerism by lending her time, attention, support, and presence to volunteer-based organizations large and small all across America. Each year, the Nixon Foundation organizes exactly that kind of birthday present Mrs. Nixon would want, a Pat Nixon Day of Service. Thousands of guests come to the library to learn firsthand about the organizations and charities Mrs. Nixon championed as First Lady. Our 2021 Pat Nixon Day of Service has to be virtual, so we invited representatives of some of those organizations to send special 109 birthday greetings. Here are the messages from the American Red Cross, the American Cancer Society, the Girl Scouts of America, the Salvation Army, the City of Yorba, the Orange County Sheriff's, USC's Town and Gown, and the Richard Nixon Library Docents Guild.
I have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of the American Red Cross. I'm terribly sorry we can't be together in person today, but I am delighted for this opportunity to celebrate the anniversary of First Lady Pat Nixon's birthday and to recognize not only her tremendous contribution to the United States of America, but also her incredible legacy as a humanitarian. Pat Nixon was a person of great strength and compassion who touched countless lives for the better. She was also quoted as saying, "People are my project," and the courage and kindness she displayed in her capacity as both First and Second Lady truly helped to redefine these roles. Here at the American Red Cross, our mission is to prevent and alleviate human suffering by harnessing the power of our volunteers and the generosity of the American people. We respond to more than 60,000 disasters every year, ranging from home fires that can displace a single family to a hurricane that impacts millions. Thanks to our selfless blood donors, we also provide around 40% of the nation's life-saving blood products for patients in need. We train millions of Americans each year in vital health and safety skills like CPR, first aid, and water safety. We deliver comfort and emergency support to the men and women of our armed forces, our veterans, and their families. And we also help with neighbors abroad with critical disaster preparedness and disease prevention training. When I reflect on our Red Cross mission, it's hard for me to think of anyone who embodies our humanitarian spirit and values more than Mrs. Nixon did. She was a champion of volunteerism here at home and a tireless representative of American goodwill abroad, traveling to more than 81 countries. And much like the founder of the American Red Cross, Clara Barton, Pat Nixon was also a true trailblazer. Her commitment to education, her efforts to make the White House more accessible to everyone, and her work to lift up others all had a profound impact on people around the world. So on behalf of the American Red Cross, thank you once again for this opportunity to celebrate the life and legacy of First Lady Pat Nixon. I know I speak for all of us when I say we are deeply grateful for the Nixon Foundation's ongoing partnership and support of our mission. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for your commitment to carrying on Mrs. Nixon's legacy of service over self.
Hi, I'm MJ Jenkins, and I'm a breast cancer survivor and volunteer for the American Cancer Society. First Lady Pat Nixon selected the American Cancer Society as an important volunteer cause during her time at the White House. She played a vital role as spokesperson and representative for the society. By attending special events, learning about our programs, she inspired researchers and patients for years to come. Mrs. Nixon's leadership made a difference and set a gold standard for women in leadership roles for nonprofits worldwide. For the American Cancer Society celebrates Mrs. Nixon for her leadership through the years, and we thank the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum for their support.
Hello, my name is Vicki Shep, and I am the proud CEO of Girl Scouts of Orange County, a nonprofit organization of 30,000 strong, nearly 18,000 girls and 12,000 adults from every zip code in Orange County who believe that every girl can change the world. The anniversary of First Lady Pat Nixon's birthday is deeply meaningful to Girl Scouts across the nation. What you may not know is that Girl Scouts was founded on March 12, 1912. And the First Lady was born on March 16th of the same year. And the connections run deeper still. Both Julie and Tricia Nixon, daughters of the late First Lady and President, were active Girl Scouts growing up, and Mrs. Nixon was their co-leader. She later served as the honorary national president of Girl Scouts of the USA, welcoming thousands of Girl Scouts to the White House and visiting troops across the nation. Mrs. Nixon's legacy of service aligns closely with Girl Scouts' mission to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. Every day, in big and small ways, Girl Scouts are stepping up, taking action, and preparing to be the visionary changemakers our nation needs. On behalf of Girl Scouts, we join you today in celebrating the anniversary of First Lady Pat Nixon's birthday and thank her deeply for inspiring generations of Girl Scouts to tackle issues they are passionate about. And yes, make the world a better place.
My name's Captain Nursing Kisson from the Salvation Army here in Orange County. I want to first start off by saying happy birthday to Pat Nixon. Pat Nixon was a champion of volunteers, and the Salvation Army is a volunteer army who lives and serves those who are most needy and on the margins of society. Pat Nixon was a champion of the Salvation Army and a great supporter of our great organization. We want to acknowledge her today and celebrate with you the legacy of a woman who left a mark upon Orange County. Late President Richard Nixon said this remarkable quote about his late wife. He said, "When you think about Pat, think about the sunshine through her smile." And when Pat smiled, the sun of hope and tomorrow shined through her.
Hi, I am Peggy Huang, Mayor of Yorba, the proud home of the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum, and I'd like to wish everyone a happy Pat Nixon Day of Service. As one of only 13 cities in the country to house a presidential library, we are truly honored by this unique privilege and value the special partnership we share with the Nixon Foundation. Yet for all the pride we have in Yorba, our community is humbled that President Nixon and First Lady Pat Nixon chose Yorba as their final resting place. We continue to honor their legacy and mission by continuing to provide exceptional service to every member of our community. As we celebrate Pat's extraordinary life of serving people, I believe the best way to honor her is to approach everything we do with a dedication to excellence, especially in matters that affect people. As public servants, my City Council colleagues and I, along with the City staff, continually keep that goal in mind as we make decisions that profoundly impact our community. Yorba motto is the land of gracious living, and we keep those words true by treating every person with respect, dignity, and grace. Our goal is simple: to redefine and elevate the quality of service a public agency can provide. This unprecedented year has been uniquely challenging as our city faced not only a pandemic, but a wildfire too. It is said that challenge reveals character, and I couldn't be more pleased by our relentless pursuit of service excellence. Whether it's our people working through the night to evacuate residents or creating economic relief programs to help small businesses, I am filled with confidence that Yorba Linda is one of the most remarkable communities in the world. It's no wonder at all why Richard and Pat chose Yorba Linda, and we will continue our exceptional work so that we will always be deserving of a special part of Pat's legacy. Thank you.
The Pat Nixon Day of Service honors the legacy of our former First Lady and carries on her cause of volunteerism. As a Sheriff's Department, our primary mission is to keep our community safe. This is accomplished through enforcing the law, but also through being engaged with the public we serve. We work as a partner with organizations that help those in need and strive to make our county a better place. Through support of the Special Olympics, blood drives, school supply drives, drug education, and many other activities, our deputies volunteer throughout the year in service to others. Mrs. Nixon said, "Caring for others creates the spirit of a nation." Evident by the many good works done in our community, the spirit of Orange County is one of compassion. I encourage you to look for opportunities to serve and lend a helping hand to your neighbor. Keeping Orange County a great place to live is the responsibility of every resident.
Hello, my name is Elle Feldman, Vice President of Fund Development for Town and Gown at the University of Southern California. We are a nonprofit philanthropic organization whose main purpose is to award merit-based scholarships to our stellar and worthy students. It is an honor to commend First Lady Pat Nixon, who had been supportive of Town and Gown. She is an honorary member and has a fully endowed scholarship with us and currently funds a scholarship for one of our students. In case you did not know, Mrs. Nixon attended USC in 1934 and graduated in 1937 with a degree in merchandising, which is equivalent to a master's degree today. She was the First Lady to hold a degree of this level at that time. She was also given an honorary doctorate from USC in 1961. Mrs. Nixon actively worked to advance the lives of many underprivileged individuals. She was considered First Lady of all the people. Town and Gown is honored to celebrate this special birthday anniversary, and we are proud of her association with us. She would so fondly note that people are her project. She's supportive and was devoted to volunteerism, and we are also aligned with that vision. First Lady Pat Nixon shares our mission to empower our scholars and send them into the world with confidence and sense of service over self. Happy birthday, Mrs. Nixon, and thank you for touching the lives of many Americans.
Hi, I'm Vic Dennis, and I have the honor of serving as president of the Docent Guild here at the Richard Nixon Presidential Library. We play many important roles here. We share the stories behind the story, we lead tours of school groups and adults, and we support public events like lectures and book signing. But the most important thing we do here at the library is we bring to life the story of our 37th president. But an important part of that story is the life of the woman whose birthday we celebrate today, Mrs. Pat Nixon. Her spirit of volunteerism lives on today and is embodied in our 165 all-volunteer Docent Guild. We would love for you to become a part of our Docent Guild family. And at the end of this video, we'll have information about how you can become a docent here. But before that, let's take a look at some of our great docents in action.
Hello, I'm Hugh Hewitt, president of the Richard Nixon Foundation. I'm delighted to welcome you to this commemoration of what would have been the 109th birthday of Patricia Ryan Nixon. We are honored to have with us the Yorba Girl Scout Honor Guard, who will present the colors and lead us now in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Honor Guard, attention. Girl Scout, attention. Even though you may be at home, I ask you to please rise out of respect for the flag of the United States of America. Honor Guard, advance. Lady Liberty holds her torch up high. Over my head, the bald eagle can fly. 50 stars and stripes 13. What do all these symbols mean? I see them all high above, and all stand for the country I love. Please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor Guard, honor the colors. Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, girls. Mrs. Nixon was a strong supporter of the Girl Scouts, and as First Lady served as the honorary chair of the Girl Scouts of America. She was also a troop leader when her daughters Tricia and Julie were about the age of some of the Girl Scouts here today. I know she would have been so pleased to have the Girl Scouts open our program today. Thank you, girls. It's a tribute to the respect and affection in which Pat Nixon is still held, and so many organizations are participating in and supporting today's ceremonies. We are once again grateful to the Crean Foundation for their generous grant in support of this annual celebration of First Lady Pat Nixon and her profound spirit of volunteerism. They are good friends of the Nixon Foundation. I want them to know how much we appreciate it and all that they have done for us. We're also thankful to each organization that participated in making that great opening video tribute to Pat Nixon possible, including the Orange County Sheriff's Department, the American Red Cross, the Nixon Library's Docent Guild, the Salvation Army, the University of Southern California Town and Gown, the American Cancer Society, the City of Yorba, and the Girl Scouts of America. Mrs. Nixon loved flowers, and gardening was one of her favorite pastimes. I know she would want me to thank the following organizations for sending the beautiful displays of flowers here today, which include the Crittenton Services for Children and Families, the Pat Nixon Republican Women Federated, the 4-H Society, Lifestream Blood Bank, and the Office of California Senator Josh Newman, who represents our 29th district. Thanks to all of these groups and their members for remembering Pat Nixon today. Ladies and gentlemen, to know Pat Nixon was to love her. Way back in the 1950s at a political campaign rally, President Eisenhower said of Vice President Mrs. Nixon, "Dick, you're controversial, but everybody loves Pat." And everybody did, and still does. I had the honor and pleasure of coming to know Mrs. Nixon in the late 1970s when I worked for former President Nixon down in San Clemente. She was always warm and friendly to President Nixon's small staff, making sure that her husband wasn't working us too hard and sharing her natural Irish charm with us all. When Pat Nixon was born late in the evening on March 16, 1912, in a miner's shack in Ely, Nevada, few would have predicted the remarkable life she would lead. When her Irish father, Will Ryan, came home after a long night shift working at the mine, he was thrilled to find that his brand new daughter had arrived and proudly proclaimed, "She's my St. Patrick's babe in the morning." Forever thereafter, she liked to mark her birthday and celebrate St. Patrick's Day at the same time. Pat Ryan grew up in humble circumstances on a small family farm about 20 miles from here in what is now known as Cerritos, but was then called Artesia. No stranger to hard work, from a very young age, Pat Ryan was determined to make something of herself, and she most certainly did. At a time when only 1 in 10 young women completed a 4-year college education, Pat Nixon graduated with honors from USC. She worked her way through school, holding a variety of jobs to help pay her way, including she appearing in many different films. After graduation, she joined the faculty of the Whittier High School, where she met a young local lawyer named Richard Nixon, who fell in love with her immediately. It took her a bit longer to reciprocate his feelings, but in 1940, they married. In 1946, just 6 years after they were wed, and less than a year after the end of World War II, the Pat and Dick Nixon team was born when Mr. Nixon became a candidate for the United States House of Representatives from California's 12th Congressional District. As the wife of a congressman, senator, vice president, and president, Pat Nixon broke new ground, redefining the role of a political spouse from a largely invisible presence to a true partner. During the vice presidential years, Pat Nixon traveled the world, superbly representing the United States. As a result of her natural love of people, she made sure that her schedule allowed her to meet with the people of each country that she visited. Schoolrooms and hospitals, orphanages and marketplaces. Wherever she went, she was cheered and welcomed. Her deep interest in the lives of what were called regular people then earned her many friends in every corner of the globe. Effectively promoting America to nations never before visited by senior government officials of the United States, Pat Nixon became known as America's ambassador of goodwill. 8 years after she completed her service as wife of the vice president, she returned to Washington as First Lady. Shortly after entering the White House, Pat Nixon was asked what her special project would be. She said, "People are my project," and she lived that out in everything she did during the presidential years. She traveled the country to promote community-based volunteerism. She presided over the transfer of previously restricted federal land, literally from coast to coast, to state and local governments to be used as parks for the enjoyment of the public. She made the White House handicapped accessible, created special tours there for the blind and for the hearing impaired. She had brochures printed in several different languages for non-English speakers, and she inaugurated the first public tours of the White House gardens, a much-loved tradition that continues to this very day. She also acquired more historic furnishings, artworks, and decorative art pieces for the White House collection than any First Lady before or since. That's more than 600 items. In addition, she was the first First Lady to represent the President of the United States in an official capacity on a diplomatic mission, and became the first First Lady to travel to the Soviet Union and to the People's Republic of China. Pat Nixon was also the first First Lady to wear pants in the public. I think it can be accurately said that Pat Nixon put the first in the First Lady. Her service to our nation made her one of the most admired women in the world, and here at the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum, she will always be our most admired woman. We honor her life, her legacy, and her countless contributions to our nation, and remember her for what her husband called the sunshine of her smile. So, thank you for joining us today to remember and honor Patricia Ryan Nixon, a remarkable woman whose life and legacy made her, as President Eisenhower once said, loved by everyone. Happy birthday, Mrs. Nixon. Now it is my honor to ask Girl Scouts Kira O'Connell and Bailey Reed to lay at Mrs. Nixon's memorial a wreath in her honor. Thank you, girls, for that very special tribute. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Heath Lee is a historian and the author of a remarkable book, The League of Wives, the untold story of the women who took on the U.S. government to bring their husbands home. In her book, Heath recounts how the wives of American POWs in Vietnam worked to ensure that their husbands held in brutal conditions by the North Vietnamese were not forgotten by the public and by the United States government. Heath relates how the wives came to admire President Nixon for his tireless efforts to bring the POWs home with honor and capture their gratitude to the president when their husbands returned home from captivity after the signing of the Paris Peace Agreement to end the war. Heath is currently working on a new biography of Pat Nixon, which promises to be a thoroughly researched and beautifully written account of Mrs. Nixon's life. We're so pleased that she has joined us from her home in Virginia to help us salute Mrs. Nixon on her birthday. Heath, it's all yours. Pat Nixon embodied and applied the spirit of volunteerism. As Second Lady, she ignored convention and pioneered new traditions by insisting that in addition to the traditional official receptions and formal events, her schedule always included schools and hospitals and orphanages. In 1955, she ruffled feathers but won hearts when she visited a leper colony in Panama. On May 31, 1970, Peru was hit by a devastating earthquake. It is still Peru's most catastrophic natural disaster and one of the 10 most destructive quakes in the history of the world. President Nixon acted, mobilizing American resources and allocating $10 million for a Peruvian relief program. The relations between the two nations had been strained, and this immediate and pragmatic response made a powerful impression. Pat Nixon was touched when she read the reports and saw the heart-rending images. Typically, she wanted to help. She decided to go to Peru herself, bringing a plane load of vitally needed relief supplies and demonstrating the concern and compassion of the President and the American people. Her historic visit was a personal mission, a humanitarian triumph, and a diplomatic coup. To mark this 109th birthday, the Richard Nixon Foundation asked historian, curator, and author Heath Lee, who is currently researching a biography of Pat Nixon, to take an in-depth look at the First Lady's historic mercy mission to Peru.
On May 31st of 1970, the Great Peruvian Earthquake hit the coastal town of Chimbote, Peru. It was a 7.9 on the Richter scale. 70,000 died, 50,000 were injured, and 800,000 were left homeless. In landslides after the quake, entire villages were destroyed. A wall of ice, mud, and snow came loose from Peru's highest mountain after the quake. It buried the entire town of Huang. All that remained was a statue of Christ above the city cemetery and the tops of 4 90-foot palm trees. The only ones spared were a group of children attending a hillside circus that day. All were orphaned by the landslide. Pat Nixon witnessed these horrific events on television in the United States. She was so deeply disturbed by the scenes of devastation she saw, she felt she must do something personally to help. President Nixon encouraged her to go solo to the scene of the disaster. On June 28, 1970, Mrs. Nixon flew to Peru on Air Force One with another jet in tow, carrying tons of relief supplies to Lima, Peru. Mrs. Nixon also brought members of the United States press with her and $25,000 in relief checks written to her personally. The goal of the trip was to bring food, medical supplies, and other useful items to those in need, but also for Mrs. Nixon to use her platform as First Lady to focus world attention on the Peruvians' plight. This would and did encourage other countries to also send relief and supplies to Peru. After arriving in Lima, Mrs. Nixon was greeted by Consuelo Velasco, the First Lady of Peru. Mrs. Nixon's prior global travels and love of people allowed her to make an instant warm connection with Mrs. Velasco. The two women hit it off and often walked arm in arm together during the trip. The next morning, the supplies were loaded onto a cargo plane, taking Mrs. Nixon, Mrs. Velasco, and a few members of the press deep into the Andes Mountains, where they made a dangerous landing on a dirt strip. Mrs. Nixon sat in a kitchen chair bolted to the floor of the plane with no seatbelt, while Mrs. Velasco sat in the co-pilot's seat. When they disembarked, the two women took a Marine helicopter to the worst hit areas and spent 5 hours picking through the rubble of demolished homes. In her aqua suit and heels, Mrs. Nixon hugged children, held the hands of villagers, met the people on the ground, and empathized with their situation. Mrs. Velasco, used to more formal interactions with the Peruvian people, followed suit. She followed Mrs. Nixon's lead, hugging children and talking person to person with those she encountered. The next day, the two women met with leaders of volunteer agencies as well as more everyday people affected by the quake. At the Hospital del Niños, Mrs. Nixon hugged survivors, children orphaned by the traumatic events of the earthquake. Mrs. Nixon was always much more interested in interactions in places like hospitals, orphanages, schools, and village squares than she was in formal dinners, banquets, or teas. On June 29, 1971, Mrs. Nixon was awarded the Grand Cross of the Order of the Sun for her humanitarian relief work in Peru. Mrs. Velasco herself presented the award to Mrs. Nixon at the Peruvian Embassy in D.C. This is the Peruvian government's highest honor. Mrs. Nixon characteristically would not accept this award for herself, but instead declared,
"I accept it for the people of the United States who were glad to lend a helping hand to their neighbors in distress."
In sum, Mrs. Nixon was the first First Lady to serve as an official representative of the U.S. abroad. Due to her extensive travel, warm nature, and inclusive, open attitude towards people globally, her volunteer efforts in Peru were an international success. But it was the personal, non-governmental nature of Mrs. Nixon's trip, her sincere interest in the welfare of the Peruvian people, and her authentic warmth that won hearts. The Dallas Morning News wrote of Mrs. Nixon's trip, quote, "She could have been above all the tragedy, but instead, for a few hours, she became part of the tragedy, and her face and voice showed it." Mrs. Nixon was a lifelong, strong proponent of volunteerism for countless organizations. She felt it was limiting to have only one, quote, signature project. Instead, she always said, quote, "People are my project." Her genuine care and concern for the victims of the Great Peruvian Earthquake of 1970 exemplifies Pat Nixon's person-to-person humanitarian efforts. In the midst of this terrible natural disaster, Pat Nixon used her platform as First Lady to model not only volunteerism, but also empathy and concern for one's neighbor on a global stage.
Heath Lee, thank you so much for that comprehensive and moving account. During that mercy mission, reporters pointed out to Mrs. Nixon that most Peruvians didn't understand anything she said. She replied, "Even if people can't speak your language, they can tell if you have love in your heart." And those are the words that President Nixon and Tricia and Julie chose for her epitaph here at the Nixon Library. During an interview in 1960, Pat Nixon called to mind a quotation from George Bernard Shaw that she had memorized when it made an impression on her in high school. "The worst sin toward our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them." For Pat Nixon, volunteerism wasn't a cause, it was her life. She understood the dignity of work and the pragmatic compassion of working people because she was one. She wanted to use her position as First Lady to focus attention on the too often unnoticed and unsung sacrifices and daily heroism of those who give up their own precious free time in order to help others and make communities better places to live. People were her project, and the stakes were high. She said, "Our success as a nation depends on our willingness to give generously of ourselves for the welfare and enrichment of the lives of others." Her celebration of volunteerism, that perhaps is Pat Nixon's most important and enduring legacy.